Men, do you ever feel like you just can't get ahead? Like you're misunderstood? Like you have no one to talk to that truly hears you?
And women, are you often frustrated, hurt, and saddened in your relationships with the men in your life?
What if there were a community of like-minded men going through the same challenges that would support, hear, and understand what you're going through?
Working together in unison to create understanding, intimacy, and strong connections. That's the Way of the Illuminated Warrior.
Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show is a forum of candid conversations for men and women about men. Being a man today is not always easy. Until now.
Welcome to another episode of the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show, where we converse about relationships, spirituality, challenges, growth, and a plethora of other topics. And the intention is to hopefully inspire and educate you, our audience. So my guest today is a friend and a filmmaking associate. Her name is Charly Louise. And Charly is a visual storyteller and the founder of venusrisingmedia. She is a film mentor, which she facilitates through her creation known as Captivate film, which I was honored to be a part of. So welcome to the show, Charly. I'm really happy you're here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Waska. It's awesome to be your friend and to work alongside of you and fellow filmmaker, visual storyteller.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you being here because there's a lot of rich content that we could talk about, including our film projects, spirituality, rites of passage, and hopefully we'll get to all of that. So let's start the conversation through our shared love of creating visual media, and I'm sure it's going to more than likely tie together with these other topics. So we'll go to the beginning. How did you get into filmmaking, and what drives you to motivate and create the way that you do?
Well, great start there. I think I was definitely always interested in being involved in film. Started out acting, wanted to be an actor since I was a wee little one. But I picked up a camera and I was so intrigued. And over time, it went from a love of photography and acting to being behind the camera as a film director. So film definitely has always been a big part of both its inspiration, it's empowering, it's connecting. It was the first way that I really felt a lot of authentic connection with my family. My dad took me to the movie theaters every single weekend of my entire childhood. So storytelling was really what was compelling, was like how to be the storyteller versus as an actor just being told what your part of the story is and less about creating the story. And I guess what motivates me, wow, transformation, consciousness, spirituality. What motivates me is to be that bridge, to be that messenger to help shift consciousness through storytelling and impact filmmaking, and currently really focusing on documentary as it both educates, uplifts, empowers. Yeah, so.
Yeah, awesome. So do you remember the first film that your dad took you to? First
In
movie?
the theaters, oh
Yeah.
my God. It could have been something like even like A Bug's Life or something. I probably was like 4. We started going to the theaters, and I
Wow.
remember by the time I was like, 13, he was like sneaking me into like The Matrix and all these other films that are
There
like,
you go.
not quite age appropriate, but
Well, yeah, I'll share
yeah.
my first film story. So I was in my early teens. It was me, my sister, my dad, and my mom. So the first movie was Dirty Harry, which was definitely not age appropriate. I was probably 12,
Yeah.
and I remember because my mom's like putting her hand over my eyes. It was the aerial scene. They didn't have drones at the time, so I'm sure it was like a a helicopter shot of a woman like swimming naked in a pool, and my dad doesn't care, of course, and my mom's like, no, no, no. So the next movie we saw after that
Oh
was
my
Chitty
God.
Chitty Bang Bang, which was a lot more
Oh
age
yeah.
appropriate. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
but
I'd
yeah.
say so.
But film has
Oh,
always
that's
been like
awesome.
really inspirational, motivating for me also, as I know it is for you. So I said this to you recently, but like I'm like, you inspire me. You inspire me
Mhm.
because you remind me of me when I was, not that I'm like old and over the hill kind of guy, because I still create, I still love it. But
Oh
like
yeah.
your passion is just like, I love what you do because Asheville, I come from New York where it's very, very media rich. There's a lot. There's everything. There's news, there's documentary, there's TV shows, there's film, there's everything, sports,
Mhm.
entertainment, politics. Here in Asheville, as we know, it's a lot more challenging, we'll say, to get good budgets and to get
Yeah.
clients who really appreciate what we do for the production value that we offer. And what I've
Mhm.
experienced and seen with you, like you go, girl. You create stuff, you put it out there. You're not deterred by any of that stuff. And I
Mhm.
really appreciate that. And you're putting out some really good content, some valuable content, and it's inspiring. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's kind of
Thanks.
revitalized me, to be totally honest. It's great.
Well, that is awesome to hear. I can't even imagine the shift for you from New York scene of video production and, film and TV for your whole career to like transitioning to Asheville. And honestly, it's awesome just to like connect and collaborate around film as we do have a film scene, but it's small and it's growing. And I remember when I first connected with you, I was just like, yes, someone who like really understands the power and potency of media and film, storytelling. So, um, yeah, I think it's so cool that you've transitioned here to Asheville, and I know that you're working in both media and focusing on like your offerings in the spiritual world too. So,
Yeah, which
yeah,
is very exciting. Which I'm like, we're building up the excitement about that because we're going to get into that. Yeah, no, well,
cool. Yeah,
I'm sure for you as well. I know for you as well. Being able to do what we feel passionate about, creating, putting
yeah,
these images out there, and tying it into something that is spiritually enriching for not just us, but for others that are either viewing it or participating
yeah.
in it, or get to just learn and see something that they didn't know before. I mean, that's the service work that we do. I'll speak for us if you don't
Mm.
mind. Giving back, but also using our creative, potent powers to do it. It's
Mhm.
very it's empowering for me, as I would imagine it is for you as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I found my way into documentary because it is, it feels like I'm always just being of service to humanity, even if it's like a short film or, whatever kind of content, feature world especially. But it feels like for me a big place of purpose. Like every time I step into that realm of like I'm making this film, it's just like any other art form where you're channeling. It feels like that for me, where you step behind the camera and you're directing and you're sitting and interviewing and holding space. Like I never realized when I got into doc that it's such a it feels like you're a therapist some days when you're like interviewing someone and holding the space for them to be vulnerable, and you
Yeah.
have to build trust, and then the outcome of that experience and the final film to me is just like such a service to humanity. um
Yeah.
so yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It's like, whew,
Yeah.
man.
That was a very big transition for me because I come from, again, in New York, a lot of my career, probably the best money was in corporate, working for
Yeah,
AT&T and T and like some really big companies. So, but it was creative. We got to do some really cool stuff, but also broadcast TV,
yeah,
films and movies, sports, and, all of it. I feel really blessed that I got to work on some like really high level projects, like high production value projects, soap operas when they were around. I was surprised. I mean, I used to do some steady cam on that. I could, the catering alone, my God, it was like, I mean, but there were big budgets. The per diems were, so I feel really blessed to have done that. And, I've been in it for 40 years now. I got burnt in New York. I was like almost like full-time freelancing for ESPN, going in and out of the city all the time. And I'm like, you know what? Money's good, but I don't care anymore. I don't feel like I'm serving any purpose. I'm not really that into sports anymore. I don't care, and a little bit prior to that, I had gotten into the documentary work, and especially sitting with Native American, in particular, elders and we call wisdom keepers. It really like opened me up spiritually, which really helped in my own personal growth, helped with raising my kids. And then, like you were saying, also sitting with them, holding that space, just, being of service really elevated my spiritual and creative growth. That like I started getting more particular, like I'm not working on this project because this is bullshit. It doesn't serve any purpose. Instead of being like, okay, what time, where is it, and how much money am I getting paid? Because that is the way I was for a long time. I mean, I was raising a
Totally.
family, I had bills, buying houses and cars and all that crap.
Mhm.
But then I realized, like, hey, you got all that stuff. You don't
Mhm.
need any more. What's more important is being an example to your kids here. So the
Mhm.
doc work is really traditionally it's not a money making thing. Maybe you could make some money on it, sure, but it's if you're what's that dude's name from PBS, the frickin'
Ken Burns.
Ken Burns, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
right.
now he does some great stuff.
No,
Um,
yeah. No,
but
I hear you.
you do it
Um,
primarily for the passion of it and all. So
yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing. So let's talk a little bit about Captivate Film, which is another creation that I saw you manifest, and it was really nice you invited me to come along and mentor. So speak a little bit about that, how the creation process started and the process.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for being a part of that too. I think it was a big deal to have so many people involved. So I'll explain it first, which is Captivate Film was a 4 month, it's a 4 month mentorship, deep dive into filmmaking from how to write a script or a documentary treatment to all the way to editing and distribution. So the structure of it is that you work weekly with a mentor, both myself and three other mentors that are professional filmmakers. You work weekly, almost like a therapist. You're checking in every week for an hour with your mentor to move your particular film project forward, whether it's a narrative short, feature, or a documentary series. Um, we work with whatever you want to create. And amidst the weekly check-ins, there's also these workshops, which you were a part of. We had you and Simon come out to do cinematography workshops. So we do like a deep dive, full day workshop, pre-production, production, and post-production. So, um, and then at the end, the ideal is that you finish your film. In 4 months, as you may know, and other filmmakers, it's not a lot of time to go from like concept to finished film. So, for example, one short film could take pre-production anywhere from like 6 months to a year and could take, editing probably 3 to 6 months, not very long for the editing, but it takes a lot of time and investment. And so this was a structured mentorship for filmmakers, focused more on like the emerging, aspiring filmmakers um, who, yeah, want that support, accountability, education, community to move their projects forward. Some folks are really serious about being filmmakers. Some folks are, have been artists or storytellers, writers who want to dive into the world of film. So it was a first time we did it. It was a really incredible experience. I think we're going to launch it again this summer. We'll probably offer it just once a year. But the best part was that we got to weave in filmmakers like you, Waska, and a plethora of other, professional filmmakers, doc and narrative to come and teach and to bring their experience to these aspiring filmmakers. So
Yeah, it
yeah, it
was
was.
it was a beautiful experience. And for me, especially again, Asheville being a little different than I'm used to.
Yeah.
When I first came here, I tried to connect with as many professionals as I could, and there are professionals here. Some from New York, like I'm from some from the West Coast, LA, and other places as well. And then there's just people who are just again aspiring, who don't necessarily have a formal education, but are really passionate about it and they're into it. And there's not always an avenue for that. And coming from the the background because I went to college for this and all. I'm kind of like, if it's like, because back in the day,
Yeah.
even like I'd hire people like, well, I'm a director. I'm like, well, what have you directed? No clue, no, so I was always like, go get educated first, dude, because I paid my dues. But that being said, things have changed a lot. People who have passion for it, people who are willing to put in the time and invest in, in equipment and education and all, like, hey, why not? To me,
Mhm.
um, it was great back in the day. My first editing system was $27,000. It was called Media 100. The Betacam deck was $8,000. My Sackler tripod was $8,300. But that's what it
Phew.
was back then. Also, we also got paid a lot, to cover those expensive, and the work was plentiful. And then Final Cut Pro came out, and all these other options to drop the price drastically. So going from making $150 an hour editing to like, well, I'll give you $25 an hour. It was a hard nut to swallow. And
Yeah.
I came out of college and I had to pay my dues, and I realized like, hey, I had to start somewhere too. I didn't really know that as much as I thought I knew. And you know what? The circle goes around like anything else, and
Mhm.
like there's a new crop of young filmmakers and aspiring young people, like, yeah, so that's why I support you in any way I can. It's
Mhm.
like, why not? No, I've
Mhm.
met some of these old curmudgeon camera guys at video, like, dude, it's over. We had our time. Not, again, not that my time is over.
I hope
But
not. I really
no,
hope
it's
not. No.
it's absolutely not. I don't know how to
Yeah.
express it any other way. I've just,
Yeah.
hopefully it's more wisdom. I've seen so much, and it's just
Yeah.
very, very motivating to see young people who are willing to put in the time and
Mhm.
effort. And the way you do it. What I would say is in right relationship with the media, with the content, and with the people. So
Mhm.
that's why
Mhm.
I'm always inspired, and I love working with you. It's wonderful.
Mm.
So I may be the seasoned professional, but I have a lot of respect for what you offer, what you do, and your motivation to get things going, get things done, to invite people in to work.
Mm.
It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. It really
Yeah,
is.
thanks. Thanks. Yeah, and I think something you're speaking to was like part what inspired me to make a mentorship itself because I also did go to the college route. I went to Savannah College of Art and Design, and it took me a long time to move through that college structure for film because it was so geared towards Hollywood, make it big, be the next Tarantino, versus what I really enjoy now, which is indie film,
Hmm.
And it took me going to a lot of film festivals to realize, like, wow, you don't just have to work with $60 million budgets. You can work with a $3 million budget or less, and
Yeah.
dock it's way less. But that barrier, I think for sure, I imagine when you were going to college and it was still at the end of it for me when I was going to college, there's like so many barriers into
Hmm.
film. Um, that I, really wanted to sort of remove some of those barriers of like, hey, you don't have to pay $50,000 a year or whatever art school
Yeah.
costs nowadays for 4 years, $200,000 to be a filmmaker. Like,
Yeah.
instead, invest some time and money into getting a base level education and then use any other money like $50,000 I could have been making a few documentary feature
For
length
sure.
films
Right.
or like you did right after college is like get in the industry, get your foot in
Yeah.
there, start working, even if it's a PA, like whatever your track, like just get in because you're gonna make the connections, and then you'll land the jobs, you'll be able to
Right.
buy the equipment and sort of build your experience level there. And so I was trying to offer something that wasn't really offered for me, which I thought you got to go traditional, you got to go to college. And it's not true anymore. Like
No.
people have iPhones and people have like, literally your phone making feature films and social media and TikTok and so much content now is coming out. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's cool. So yeah, I just changed my background. So yeah, I used to work on on
Yeah.
on fairly big stuff, studio stuff. So to speak to what you're saying, so the last big project I worked on is years ago, that Netflix movie, Don't Look Up, that had a full
Hmm.
star cast. It was a $333 million budget. I mean, it was 10% was just for COVID, to make sure we were all safe. Point being is I met a lot of people on there. Yes, some of us were um well, I mean, we were all seasoned professionals, but there was people on there that I met that didn't go the traditional route, that didn't go to college, that just, knew somebody, or they just learned, and they just hands on, so there's definitely ways of doing that. And yeah, those projects are awesome to work on. They're it's good money and all. And again, the catering is awesome. That's that's a big
Yeah.
perk. But the small, like what we have here, like you turned me on to like Simon, who's really talented. Worked with him a few times, Craig and Trevor and these other guys that, and I have a small project coming up that like we're going to work on together, which is just it just warms my heart to be able to do that, just to connect people and do some creative process like that, which I think is beautiful. So I don't think it really matters, the content and the not the content, but the budget and the
Mhm.
it's more the content and the camaraderie and like creating together.
Mhm.
So what do you got
Mhm.
going on now? What are you putting together now? Your latest
Mhm.
creation?
Yeah, I've got a few different things I'm focusing on. One, I'm supporting a woman in sort of re-editing and supporting with a series called "There's Got to Be More to Life." It's around her own journey, being involved in the Boston um, marathon bombing that happened,
Mm,
and her alternative holistic healing journey that developed from her experience being in the marathon bombing. And so that's we're working to re-edit that and put it out this summer. And then she's got two films coming out of that around trauma, healing, veterans, really focus on veterans as well. So um, that is an exciting collaboration. One that I'm also super stoked about, where it's in development, is, and I mentioned this to you, I'd love to have your support and collaboration, which is a rites of passage
yeah,
film.
we're getting into that.
And yeah, so we can dive more into that, but that I'm, the current title is called Threshold. So to me, that's really the focus is around global rites of passage, like what's happening to help initiate us into adulthood, into womanhood, into being men. And historically, how has that gone, and how have we revived that to fit the modern era? Um, you know, and so that's we can get into that, but I'm excited about
Yeah,
Threshold as well.
yeah.
The last one is called Woven, which is going to be a very long journey, but this one I'm really stoked about. It's another, I'm co-directing it, definitely producing it under Venus Rising Media, and we're in the midst of applying for grants right now and looking for fiscal sponsors. But Woven is about identity and fabric and how that's influenced us from birth to death. And so that also has some rites of passage in it, but the focus is really on how our identity is literally woven in as threads into what we wear and how this represents us, and how textiles used to be we used to be really sovereign in making textiles, and now it's been mass produced and in factories, and so it's a resurgence and a reclamation of identity through fabric.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. I love that project. And that's one of the women who was part of the Captivate film mentorship also.
Yes.
So she's learning from that. She's working with you. So it's coming full circle, which is awesome. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Lisa Shoemaker
Mhm.
joined me. She was a impetus for why I really wanted to start Captivate so soon. I heard about her story and I was like, let's go. Let's get this
Yeah.
going. Like, you put it aside for 20, 30 years. She traveled the world, was a fabric maker, and she documented in the early 2000s. She filmed a bunch of things, but wasn't able to bring it to post-production, bring it to through the edit. So really inspiring story. But yeah, Captivate inspired this
Yeah.
collaboration for sure.
Beautiful. And before I forget it, I don't know if you're looking for anybody else to interview. I have a close friend who was at the Boston bombing. So if you need other people, so
Oh yeah,
she's healed through talking about it, and she's been interviewed by a lot of people before. So if you need that contact,
interesting.
let me
That
know.
could be really, yes, yeah, we could, yeah, we're definitely in the editing phase and less production phase, but that seems
Yeah.
like a very curious interview. So,
Yeah. So let
uh,
me know on that. So now
cool.
the really exciting part for me. So
Okay,
I
yeah.
guess about 2 weeks ago, you invited me and other people to come and support. You were doing a little screening of Threshold. your film about rites of passage that occurred
Mhm.
here. I'll ask you to speak a little bit more about that. And for me, it was awesome because I had a very tight community back on Long Island. I was originally invited into it was a woman's mystery school. Of course, I wasn't privy to
Wow.
everything, but I was invited to do like first level moon ceremony, and it was just awesome. There was a handful of men as part of this community. That's actually how I got my spiritual name, Waska Wabus, is through that community. And actually, the picture behind me, this is like some of the guys from the Illuminated Warrior program, our rites of passage. Very much. And it was very inspiring to see what you guys did in the short film that you did, because it was so many of the things resonated that young boys that we do, that is so vital. I mean, it helped
Mhm.
me. Two of my three sons went through it also. The other one's still very
Wow.
resistant, and he won't watch this anyway, so I could say that. Um, uh,
Heard.
but it's so valuable. I mean, and it warms my heart to know that this work. It's helped me grow and elevate my personal,
Mhm.
vibration, but also just, my kids and other young guys and older guys too. I mean, we've had guys, I think it's two or three guys in that photo that are in their teens. And I've had guys like in their, actually 80s, so it's, what I was inspired about coming to, at first being the only divine masculine amongst whatever a dozen women, with young women doing
Yeah.
their song and dance, and it was like, yes, this is what guys need to experience that they don't experience. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to ask you about, with how it helps elevate and grow women, but men also need to go through
Mhm.
their own rites of passage, but then meshing the two together, which is something I'm visioning that you and I are going to talk about, possibly doing something like that in the future. So
Mm.
anyway,
Awesome.
I want to talk about the Rites of Passage film. You were a participant in it, which is
Mhm.
an incredible experience in itself.
Mhm.
But you also documented it. So
Mhm.
let's dive into that and the
Yeah.
experience for you.
Cool. Yeah. So this film was surrounding a 9-day initiation into rites of passage for women. And it was also a guide training. So not only do you go through your own rites of passage, but then you can learn how to support other women and young women through their rites of passage. So this was supported and led by Lena Eastis from Earth Path Education. Um, it for me, I knew I've done a lot of ceremony. For me, like the spiritual community and Sweat Lodge and yeah, different types of ceremony have been their own mini initiations
Hmm.
into new parts of my life. And I've always been very clear that in order to evolve as a spirit, as a soul, that, it takes community, intention, ritual. Like that's been very clear in my healing journey. And I saw this as an opportunity both to grow for myself, surrounded by women, supported into a new phase of my spiritual growth. And also as a documentary filmmaker, what an opportunity to um, be involved and like trusted to sort of be a fly on the wall and witness other women's experience of transformation.
Yeah.
So that's ultimately what it is a film about this rites of passage that we go through, a 9-day, every day was like a whole new ceremony, a whole new journey. And it's just like a taste of it because of course there's things you can't film, like you have the lodge behind you. It's like of course I couldn't, I could film a little bit of us dressing the lodge and creating the fire, but it's sort of this balance between, like, especially in ceremony, what are you allowed to film, like what is appropriate to
Yeah.
film, and what is really just to be witnessed in person and to be present for. So
Yeah.
it was a beautiful dance that I did my best to weave both parts of like participating and filming. And I did actually film it on my phone, which is the newest Samsung, like
Looks great.
22 things. So, but the phone really allowed me to like we were hiking a lot. We were in ceremony. We were in these like really intimate spaces. And instead of pulling out a big camera with lenses, I decided to use the phone because it was a little bit more subtle. And I think people are so familiar with phones that it allowed people to still get really vulnerable and not feel like the spotlight was on them.
Yeah, yeah, it really worked. So I just want to backtrack a little bit because you and I are very fully versed in rites of passage and what we're talking about. So for people who don't necessarily know, and this is why it really touched my heart. So I've gone through many initiations throughout my awakening path and starting the Illuminated Warrior program. We did things that I know are very similar to what you guys did, just seeing it in the film, which other people might not
Hmm.
recognize. So we would do different types of challenges, physical challenges, spiritual
Hmm.
challenges. Again, the Inipi Lodge, the sweat lodge, going into what's the womb of the mother and praying and sweating and being there for each
Yeah.
other, being there for family and community, making sacred bundles, drumming, whatever it is. So it's a spiritual experience that's different for everybody. That you're tapping into source, into creator, into
Hmm.
Gaia, into Mother Earth, being with your brothers and sisters in that situation, pushing and stretching yourself, challenging yourself to be open, to have that Buddha mind of like, I don't know anything, but I'm here to fill my
Hmm.
cup with the beautiful, wonderful, energetic things that I know are available for me. So there's
Hmm.
the challenges, there's the initiation, there's of course, the celebration at the end. So hopefully that gives a little bit more context into what we're talking
Hmm.
about, which I saw that you
Hmm.
guys did in the film, which again you captured
Hmm.
swimmingly beautifully. Yeah, and then having some interviews of the women, you could see
Hmm.
they had very moving growth experiences because it started
Hmm.
out as for the younger people, which in every culture, every tradition, there's a rites of passage program, and it's usually a rites of passage into, like in the Jewish tradition, it's a bar mitzvah, which is
Hmm.
a hell of a lot easier than doing like an indigenous type of rites of passage where Filipinos, they take you out in a boat and a mile or two out and literally sink or swim, or like the Lakota 4 day or longer vision quest, things that really
Hmm.
push you and stretch you to reach your limits and realize,
Hmm.
okay, this is what it's about, not what society is telling me it's about. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so in your experience, because again, you
Absolutely.
did both, you documented it and you also experienced it. So what
Hmm.
was your experience being part of that as one of the women in
Hmm.
this sacred group of women?
Mm. Yeah. Thanks for bringing it back too to like, I know rites of passage isn't super common for everyone to understand what that is. And I know for myself, I had some vague idea of what it was, and I really got a deep dive into it. And for me, it's really honoring the transitions in life, from girlhood to being a woman, and from womanhood to motherhood, motherhood to crone. It's like there's all these life transitions, and then everything in between that you don't talk about, like experiencing death, having painful moments of heartbreak or trauma, grief, all these things. So it's initiation is such a broad term, and rites of passage is a broad term. But I think, like for me, this really solidified. Uh, this solidified moving into womanhood. Like I've had my own journey with gender and sexuality and healing some of these sort of earlier traumas in my life. And this gave it a name. It acknowledged the pain that we've been through, the grief that we hold, the traumas. It brought in community and sisterhood, which,
Mm,
I know I've felt before, but we were strangers when, mostly all of us were strangers coming into this initiation. And by the end of it, it is like, these women will be there for me thick and thin for the rest of my
yeah.
life. I know I can always call on them. And that was just 9 days together in different capacities. And, some of the challenges are really hard. Like we walked across a bed of fire, we broke an arrow on our neck. We had a really deep dive into plant medicine ceremonies. Um, and we had a solo fire in the woods. um there was a drum lodge, which is like you make your own drum for the first time. And then, so there's like the bigger ceremonies that happen, but then really it's these little moments like playing your drum on the mountaintop and singing your first song that like really stand out in my mind where I'm like, wow, I could break through some of that throat chakra
Hmm.
where I'm afraid to take up space and I'm afraid to be heard and seen. And sitting with a pipe ceremony with your sisters, which isn't an extremely physically challenging thing, right? Like you're sitting, you're resting in the sun, and you're praying with the sacred pipe. But that those moments of vulnerability,
Yeah.
and being seen and heard by your sisters and speaking truths that you may have never told anybody before, like those are also these little initiations, and moments of deep, authentic connection where like you can be yourself and you can be seen and heard by others who are also being themselves, and so much acceptance and love that it really created a space for transformation to shed your past self. And by those end of those 9 days, I was like, who even was Charlie? Because I am a whole new woman, a whole new person, coming out of that experience. It really, truly was one of the most life-changing 9 days that I've ever had. So, yeah, it
Yeah.
was incredible,
Yeah.
truly.
It's something we could describe, but until you go through it, you really don't know. It's like they say the map of the river is not the river. I get to describe the river to you. It's this deep and it's this wet and this is what it feels like. But until you put your hand and your feet in it, you don't know. And it is
Mm,
life changing. So I think it's really essential for every man, every woman, every young man, every young woman to really
mhm,
have that opportunity, which it's becoming more available. But it's not something
mhm,
again, and I was brought up in the Jewish tradition. So our rites of passage, which is bar mitzvah, which was kind of by rote.
mhm.
It was good, not to diss it at all, but it didn't, after that, you're supposed to be quote unquote a man. Did I feel like a man?
Mm.
No, my voice was cracking. And, it was more
Yeah,
religious but,
yeah,
again, that was just along the path. But now
yeah.
these more, I consider them more modern day rites of passage, but passages, but they're based on, and honoring
Mhm,
the traditions of the old ways that worked and that still works.
mhm,
And it takes us back
mhm,
to our core and our roots and our, really our basis of who we are, sheds away all the bullshit, that we could
mhm,
actually see ourselves and through
mhm,
our own lens, which is
mhm.
a really, I think, vital, beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like it's important to mention that most of these rites of passage are earth-based. Like they're very much in tune with the cycles of nature to help you be in tune with your own inner nature, and like kind of a reclamation of your humanity, really, because like at the core of it, we're no different than any other animal. We just think we are. We think we're above,
Yes, true.
we're playing God out here. But really, it's a very humbling experience where you get in touch with nature. All the elements are involved usually. Um, and I think you're right. I hope that everybody gets to experience their own version of rites of passage. It doesn't have to be as extreme as some cultures. Some people aren't ready for a 4-day vision quest,
Right.
um, or being left in the middle of the ocean, right? Sink or swim kind of situations. But yeah, so I do think that these rites of passages are an opportunity to acknowledge yourself and the parts of you that haven't been seen and heard, that may feel broken and lost. And it's like a reclamation. Hey, I see you. I see this little girl. I see this little boy, who never had the chance to be fully expressed, to be wild, to express your anger, to cry, to feel powerful. I think a lot of it is reclaiming your power and not um, getting it from the outside world. It's like I'm powerful. I'm here. I'm born. Somebody thought I was a good idea because I'm alive, and like let me reclaim and shed the old and reclaim a new self.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great description of what it is. And again, you have to experience it to really get the full benefit. So,
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's for me, it's the most important work I think I've ever really done for myself and for my kids and for the men that work with me, through the
Mm-mm.
Illuminated Warrior group. So yeah, put it in full circle, the fact that you had that experience and you grew and you have some sacred sisters now and you documented it, which again, I don't blow smoke. What you put together was really awesome. I know how challenging it is being present there and for the experience, but also
Mm.
documenting in a way that's respectful, that's up here as a witness and not disturbing the process, and showing what was going on, as a as an enticement, as a way of people to see what's going on. Kudos, you really did an excellent job. And I know you're going to do some more work with that, and there's going to be more programs with that. So
Mhm.
how can people connect with you
Mhm.
to for that work? And all of your information will be, in the show notes and on here. But if they want
Cool.
to get
Yeah.
involved specifically with that work, what would you invite them to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically with rites of passage work, I'm working with Earth Path Education, so you can go to their website, and Lena Eastis has some programs here in Asheville. But there's so many programs around the country that you can just start looking into if you're West Coast or East Coast based. And then the short film is on my YouTube channel, Venus Rising Media. It's called Thresholds of Womanhood. So you can check out the film and then, yeah, reach out. I'm pretty accessible. I run a small business and I'm working on a lot of features and collaborating with other filmmakers. So, both on Instagram and my website is all named Venus Rising Media. And I've got, personal accounts off of that too. And if you want to get involved in either Captivate Film, like if you want to learn how to be a filmmaker and are, a storyteller, a visual artist that wants to move more into filmmaking, you can check out Captivate Film, also on IG, but it's on my website as well. And yeah, I think the next focus for me is finding the right characters, the right main characters to discuss the rites of passage in this feature film work and really focusing on getting more cultures involved. Like I think there's so many directions you could take it. So we've got incredible resources here, and I'm open if people out there listening are like, hey, I know this leader, this rites of passage leader, or I've done some rites of passage work. Like, let me know what your experience was. Like, I'm very curious, and I'm in this research phase, heading into production this summer, and looking for more collaboration. So, yeah, reach out on my website or Instagram. Pretty accessible. So,
I love
yeah.
that. Well, thank you, my friend, for sharing your light with the world and all that you do. And I look forward to our next collaboration as well.
Yes. Yeah, I can't wait, Waska. It's going to be great. And thank you for taking the time to connect. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from the show. So, thank you.
Absolutely. So until next time, let's continue to illuminate our paths with loving kindness.
Visit IlluminatedWarrior.com if you'd like to go deeper and find out more about what's available within the Illuminated Warrior men's transformational community. Tune in next time for more candid conversations for men and women about men on the Way of the Illuminated Warrior talk show. Until next time, illuminate your path with loving kindness.